once in a while you come across an amazing resource out there in the world that can really restore your faith in people taking on kind of the dark side in the world. You'll most likely deeply resonate with this video either as a trauma survivor yourself or as a parent or both. I had the pleasure to meet with and then later interview a gentleman by the name of John Van Arnam, who is the founder of a nonprofit organization called The Third Talk. The Third Talk educates parents, the community, school systems, you name it, about the dangers of children being exposed to online pornography. That, as John puts it in the interview, that we're swimming in a sea of online porn in society. The Third Talk offers specific tools, resources, and strategies for parents to literally have a third conversation with age-appropriate children that they never get to really hear about what is going on online and how to protect these kids. And if you grew up like me pre-internet with disengaged or neglectful parents, you probably didn't have a safe home base to talk about the magazines that you saw or the Cinemax stuff or the VHS tapes that you saw at a friend's house growing up, or even that you found your parents' sort of stash and were exposed to that. So safe kids are safe because they have caretakers that they can talk to and actually seek out help from them. I know that contradicts maybe everything that you know it when it comes to your own family, but healthy family systems create that safety for their kids. If you're new to me or new to the channel, welcome. If you like this video, feel free to hit some buttons on the screen. You can't miss with any of the buttons, specifically the like or the subscribe button, which greatly increases the spreading awareness in the community around this channel of childhood trauma. And if these videos are helpful to you and to your recovery, you can consider supporting the work that goes into this channel over at my Patreon. There's a new tier on my Patreon that offers a monthly live event with me. We hang out with fellow travelers and ask me some questions about the videos or the model of therapy behind them. I'd love to see you there. In addition, you can go to my website to check out some childhood trauma e-course work that I offer there, including some recordings of some recent webinars that you might have missed. And in other exciting news, I have two groups forming in my practice around this work. I have clinicians forming groups in Massachusetts, USA, and in North Carolina, USA. They are skilled trainees, and if you're in these states, connect with me through my website if you're interested and you want to apply for a spot in the groups. Why those specific states is these are trainees that need to practice in these states required by their license requirements. You can also check out my website if you're elsewhere to seek out some other clinicians. If you follow this white ball right up here, it takes you right to my website about all the inquiring, walks you right through it. Here is my interview with John.
Listen, I'm here with Patrick.
You do it. I don't want to do it. Well, welcome. I'm here with John Van Arnam. He is the founder of The Third Talk, which is an organization that helps parents have a difficult conversation with their children about pornography. And welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to see you
again. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Can you tell us about The Third Talk?
The Third Talk is specifically set up because parents will have a conversation with their young people about the birds and the bees. And then somewhere around middle school, a guidance counselor or a health teacher will have a conversation with your child about anatomy, pregnancy, maybe sexually transmitted infections, and then that's really it. Parents need to have a third conversation with their young people today about exposure to internet pornography. And so we called it The Third Talk to encourage parents to have an additional conversation with their young people. The jury is in on whether or not this content is bad for kids.
Right.
It hurts them emotionally, it hurts them mentally, it hurts them socially. It makes it more difficult for kids to form relationships, which can affect them now and through adolescence into adulthood.
Right.
The other particular challenge for young people is that their brains are still forming. So a lot of this content's influence on their physical brain can become long-term because of the age at which they're exposed.
Absolutely. And it's also tied into, to just our addiction to our phones, that it's just just tied into everything else. So I don't want to take the conversation somewhere else, but just that dopamine hit and getting that sort of experience of it, and then the horrible kind of conditioning that it gives us.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The phones themselves are addicting enough. But if you then add to that the content of images and videos of naked people, naked human beings engaged with each other, it's almost impossible for young people not to watch this content.
Right. And I think about, we're kind of the same generation, like, as boys or whatever, growing up the way that we grew up, we would have seen some dad's stash of magazines or some VHS cassettes or Showtime, Cinemax kind of stuff. But the way I think about it now is it's just basically times that by 1,000,000, given like the prevalence of it. It's just like, whether it's like a Facebook ad or anything.
This content and the way in which people view it has been shown to get more and more extreme. The challenge today is that a young person will have a very natural, normal, healthy interest and maybe type in, what do boys look like or what do girls look like naked? What comes up so, stingingly inappropriate for young people, but it will be the first image that they see.
Yeah.
And that can stay with them for a very long time.
Absolutely.
I mean, I talk to men's groups and I'll say, do you remember the first time that you ever saw what you would consider to be pornography? Mm-hmm. And they all raise their hand. Yeah. And say, absolutely, I remember the first time I saw it. But if I say, do you remember the third time or the 5th time or the 10th time that you saw it, they can't remember that.
Such a good point.
And I try to impress upon parents that the first images that your young children are going to see are going to stay with them for a lifetime. I mean, I'm talking to 65-year-old men who remember seeing a, Playboy magazine.
Seared in there.
Yeah.
Right. When we see it, it's so just natural to sort of be curious, but it also comes with such a charge, is what I remember the first thing that I saw. It had such a charge to it of like, this is different. What is this?
Yeah.
And, almost this like Catholic guilt. I can't look at it. I have to look at it. So there's a lot of emotion going on with all that. And what I love about our conversation is the idea about no kid should have to experience that and not have a safe home base of, I saw this thing, what am I looking at? That's the kind of relationship I want parents to have with their kids.
I couldn't agree with you more. This is not slowly turning through the pages of a Playboy magazine and watching somebody eventually slowly become less and less clothed. This is immediate and hard to turn away from. So many things that you just said are so valuable, Patrick. The guilt and the shame that comes along with watching this content for our young people. In my 20 years of doing this work, I have come to the conclusion that shame is actually what we're fighting against. There is also a part of them that knows that they shouldn't be watching it.
Right.
But when coaches don't say anything, and pastors don't say anything, and a guidance counselor doesn't say anything, and a health teacher isn't saying anything, and teachers aren't saying anything, and parents aren't saying anything, it just resides in them.
None of us have a roadmap. None of us have, so I don't mean to be pressuring parents like you need to be doing like blah, 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 blah. Because as parents, we're going to be struggling. We don't know what to say.
Right.
We don't know. This is a conversation that we avoid.
Yes.
I don't think it's because we don't want to do right by our kids. I think a lot of it is that we're just we don't feel competent to have that conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I encourage parents to lean into their incompetence around this and just understand that this is also brand new for them. This is the first time in the history of pornography that kids have the access and it's parents that don't understand. So when you were, every other generation would either find their uncle's stash of Playboy magazines or somebody would leave the VHS tape in the VCR player. Right. But somehow kids would stumble across their parents or the older generation's pornography. Today, since about 2005, now all the kids have it on every PlayStation, Xbox, Kindle, laptop, phone, you name it. If it's connected to the internet, your kids can see it. And so it's parents now who are playing catch up. And we strongly encourage parents to understand that and absorb that and avoid being, sort of dictatorial about this content, because they're not even sure. And it's not the parent's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the child's fault. It's not the parent's fault. Yeah. And so what we encourage parents to do is to not spend any time who's at fault. It's certainly not our children's fault.
Mm-hmm. Right.
These are not bad kids.
Yeah.
They have cell phones.
Yeah.
Right.
Is part of the conversation to normalize it? Like, you're gonna see it.
I encourage parents to prevent their children from seeing it through education and communication. However, statistically, they're going to see it. Mm. So I think at that point, two things need to take place. One, parents need to let young people know about the harm this can have for them, not in a blaming way or a shaming way, but just as a matter of fact way. Mm-hmm. And as you said earlier, it's so important to be a safe space for their young people. Mm-hmm. I talk to young people all the time who will tell me they don't want to talk to their parents because their parents are going to take away their phone, or their parents are going to take away their laptop.
I think that's what I mean about normalize it in a way, not to sort of just say like, well, it's out there, what are you going to do? But to sort of say, you're going to see it. And here's what you do when you do come across it. Do you know what I mean? Like, here's what you might experience or feel.
I remember when I was a teenager and my parents said to me, look, if you're ever out somewhere and the person that you're supposed to be riding with has been drinking mm-hmm. and they can't take you home, just call us and we'll come get you. And what my father said was he would keep his hands at 10 and 2. He would look straight ahead. He wouldn't say a word. And when we got home, I could go upstairs and go to my room and go to bed, and he wouldn't bring it up. Just please call. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to have a similar relationship with our young people about this content, right. Because I don't want you to see it, but if you do, I want you to come and tell me right away, and I'm not going to get you in trouble. I'm not going to punish you for that. Okay. Because the explaining of it mm-hmm. can relieve a lot of that guilt and shame, which is where we find the hurt.
For the viewer watching, for parents, how do they use your website, use your services?
Our entire premise is to provide parents the language to use to initiate this conversation. Okay? And we do that in a myriad of different ways. We go to schools, we go to PTAs, we go to churches, we go to any place where there's a large gathering of people and do this in person. The other thing that we offer that might be really valuable to your audience is what we call the Parents Guide. And it's 7 videos that walk you through not only the exact language, and when I say that, I really mean what to say and how to say it.
You're modeling.
There's nothing that you need to interpret there. We're really giving the words. But by the time a child is 8 or 9, mm-hmm. you need to be having a pornography prevention conversation with them. Right. And some parents haven't even had the birds and the bees talk by that point. Yeah. And it's very difficult for parents to wrap their heads around mm-hmm. some child that age watching it.
It's a loaded conversation. Yes. It's over a very dark subject, and these are your kids. So I love that it's modeled or sort of specific kind of a thing. Like, do parents even rehearse or get themselves ready?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So the Parents Guide gives parents the language, but also several anecdotes that they can use that make sense to a young person. For example, one of the ones that we have on there that has been very popular is we'll say, you would never get your driver's education by watching a Fast and Furious movie, right? Don't get your sex education by watching porn. No young person would sit there and think that if they watched 2 hours of a Fast and Furious movie from the time they're 11 until the time they're 16, that anybody would hand them the keys and let them go drive a car, or that they'd be any good at it, or that anybody would want to ride with them. That logically makes sense. So when we equate this content to a movie, and that this is not real, that demystifies this a lot. That's not real life. That's not how people actually behave with each other. It's a movie. And I think that we've tried to make that easy. We're getting into schools now and talking to health departments and things like that, that are understanding that this is a real challenge for kids.
Right. The way that we grow up, when we grow up in childhood trauma, we have a lot of inauthentic parenting. And what that looks like is like you might be neglected, but like once a month the parent is like, did you do your homework? So I often think in my work, most of us are struggling to not be like our parents, but we don't know how to be. That's why I love the modeling.
Yeah.
But I really think part of the trigger there is like not wanting to be like the soapbox parent, or not wanting to be authoritarian. That in the way that our childhood trauma manifests, it manifests in our parenting too. So that's what I'm speaking to. Like when you have this conversation, you're probably going to be triggered, but just the fact that you're having the conversation or working on it totally makes you different than the prior generation before, or your own parents. So just for that perspective is you can totally do this conversation, and I think it's a crucial conversation. And just to normalize, you're going to be kind of keyed up about it, but you can do it.
It is an important and necessary conversation. It's not something that we can avoid. And I think it's important we protect our children from this content to the best of our ability, even if it is scary.
One of the first videos that I saw on your website, it's a hard video, but I think it's a crucial video to the whole thing, because it's you guys interviewed a bunch of kids sharing their experience through where online porn led, where it led them.
Yeah.
Like the messed up relationships, and dangerous situations.
These are real people that had real experiences. They're not outliers by any stretch of the imagination, and it shows that this content has a major effect on pretty much every young person that watches it.
Yeah.
And thank you. I would love to have people go and take a look at that video. It is it's compelling. The things that our young people consider normal, or just a normal part of the sexual exploration process, it would make perfect sense to me that both boys and girls would not consider that to be something that's in their heart. I mean, this is extreme fantasy content created for adult people. But when young people are watching it and nobody's saying anything, they think, oh, this just must be the way it is.
But to contrast it, there's also no healthy modeling. Like, it's the only modeling. You can go hold hands on a date. You know what I mean? You can just experience kissing on a date or something like that. If you feel like you want to sort of do that, you don't have to be anything you don't want to be.
Right.
Or to be, when we had that really nice discussion at the office, to sort of say but there's a whole other world of wonderful falling in love brain chemicals that don't involve this dark energy stuff.
Well,
I think that's just like the loss of innocence in that way. It's just assuming that's where the bar is.
Well, and that is something that I think is really important for parents to also talk to their kids about, because, and we've started to do that at the Third Talk. We have absolutely stepped in to say, we will help you with healthy sexuality. When young people watch pornography, the brain releases adrenaline, dopamine, and testosterone. And those three chemicals together fire the same receptors as heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. And it feels and acts like a drug. When you hold hands with somebody that you care about, or you embrace them and cannot imagine the world spinning without them in it, those aren't butterflies. That's vasopressin, serotonin, oxytocin, collectively called the cuddle hormones, specifically existing in us to love each other and to feel that way. And that feeling of being with someone that you care about, and the sweaty hands and the nervousness, those are wonderful things for young people to experience that they are bypassing.
How do people find you?
thethirdtalk.org. And they can go onto our website and the Parents Guide. There's a link for the Parents Guide right on the front page. We have lots of videos of presentations that we've done and collaboration between public instruction and State Bureau of Investigation and other organizations that are all working together to protect our kids from this content.
Thethirdtalk.org. The link will be in the description of the video, and I hope that this was helpful to you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.